I had the opportunity to speak to Governor Kucheri and the local directors on the hurricane-related thing you put together in September, I had brought up the whole dam issue. I'm glad to see someone here. Because if there's something that's going to bite us really bad, it's the dam failure issue. And it's because we are just an old region with a lot of old facilities, be it high, moderate, low risk. But these things are out there that we're just very conveniently not paying a lot of attention to. And Winterton Pond was a 110-year-old facility. You got to give the old-timers credit. They built that puppy beautifully. They really did. And the bigger issue was that it's not just one failure. You can wind up with multiples. The 82 floods and 84 floods in Connecticut, 25 dam failures down the Thames River itself. That's catastrophic. And that's, as these comments are coming out about this dam, you know, we had this partial failure, blah, blah, blah. That to me is one of those kind of unspoken truths that we really as a community don't have a very good handle on. And these are going to be those things that surprise us and can be very devastating. And it's not just on the Blackstone, it's every community sitting in the room has got a couple of these facilities in their backyard.
And that's a very good point, because when we were going through this, Bob and I were thinking there are two things here mainly. One is the weather condition, the one we can forecast, we cannot control. And there we have the human factor, which is a lot to do with the dams and how people control those dams. So we think those two things are things that we need to understand. We need to communicate with one another. When someone releases water from one end, the other end needs to know what's happening and how fast that water is going to come down so that they can take the preventions.
Just a reminder that we are recording this, so we ask that when you do make your comments, please try to do it on mic. It'll make it a lot easier to transcribe after. So, thank you.
You know, if I can add too, there are some things since the 50s that we've done exceptionally well. The Corps of Engineers needs to be commended for West Hill Dam. That facility stored a nice slug of water that protected Woonsocket and Cumberland and downstream communities of an even worse flood. So there are things out there that have been done that have resulted in a cutting of the crest, if you will, or a lessening of the pain. But it's a river basin that's kind of hard to do much more with from a flood control standpoint. And we're left with situations like we dealt with in October.
The animation is static in that you can't zoom in or change the path at all. We do have a more dynamic product available for you, and it's called an Arc Reader project. It's got copies of all of the same photos that you saw in the animation and the floodplains. And from here, you'll be able to zoom into any area that you're interested in. Both of these will be available from the Blackstone Valley Tourism Council, and if you're interested, just check in with registration on your way out. Okay? These floodplains are from the 80s, and you'll notice in a lot of places they don't match up quite with where the river is.
And I noticed in our place, when the flood started, not flood, changed the elevation of the land. And that is not reflected.
Yeah, that's not reflected at all in these floodplains.
one of the gems that's on Kelly's sheet is that January flood. Historically, we can flood summertime with Connie Diane, October, as you've seen. But the sneaky ones are the winter ones. March of 68, January 79, April of 87, big snowmelt flood. So don't think it's just a warm season deal.
My name is Nicole Belk, and I'm with the National Weather Service Weather Forecast Office in Taunton. What we're going to present is a very brief summary of what we do, and also Victor Hahn from the Northeast River Forecast Center, and go into what happened in October 2005 from a weather standpoint, and also go into a little bit more detail on what happened along the Blackstone River. Okay, so for the sake of for saving time, we do have all these slides and provided in the handouts in the blue folders. So we will be jumping over some of these slides, and we're going to hit the main points for today. So the Weather Forecast Office is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We do forecasts and warnings for land, sea, and air. So, and also the rivers as well, of course. So we do everything from severe thunderstorm warnings, winter storm warnings, to river flood warnings, and also forecasts for different venues. We have 35 river forecast points in southern New England. That includes the Blackstone River at Northbridge and also in Woonsocket. For those two locations, we provide river stage forecasts on a daily basis. How high is the river going to go for the next couple of days? And in addition, if there's river flooding expected at those 2 points, we issue river flood warnings.
The river information that Nicole gets is guidances that the Northeast River Forecast Center produces, and we provide those guidances to the local forecast office. The advantage that we have here, especially in the Blackstone Valley, is that we have the River Forecast Center, which is one of the 13 river forecast centers across the United States. As we can see here, these are all the forecast points here. But remember the conditions here. You have key players in your backyard. That's the River Forecast Center and the Boston office out in the same complex as Taunton, Massachusetts. In the Northeast River Forecast Center, basically we have about 178 forecast points that we issue on a daily basis to different forecast offices in the New England and New York area. Next slide, please. These are some of the states that the Northeast River Forecast Center serves. For the southern New England forecast points, these are some of the rivers that we do forecast around this area. Next slide, please. Other products besides forecasting rivers is another product that could be crucial to you folks, and that's the flash flood guidance, as well as the headwater guidance, because the headwater is what you need to know what's coming down the river down here to Rhode Island. Next slide, please. I also believe that, Larry mentioned that there's three main important things that we should come out with from this meeting. That's the thinking process. What are the thinking processes? What's the linking processes? And what's the outcome? And I believe that the Weather Service does provide the thinking, linking, and outcome. And that's what we're going to try to present. What were the thought processes that's ahead of times and what we can think about. What's linking all of us together as far as the rainfall. Nicole's going to present basically what the weather pattern's like. And we're going to look at the immediate and emerging conditions that people should be aware of prior to a flooding event.
Okay, next we'll go into the weather conditions. Now, this is a weather map from Thursday evening, October 13th. And what we had over here was a low pressure system. This low had the remnants of Tropical Depression 22. 1 week before, we had remnants from Tammy that had gone through and provided a few inches of rain in the Rhode Island area, a whole lot more up in New Hampshire where there was devastating flooding. So now we have the second system coming up. The soil's moist. It was dry before, but now it's been moistened up by that system with the remnants of Tammy. And this low pressure is coming up. Very slow mover. This system was a very slow mover. Now here I have jumped over to the early morning of the 15th. At this point, the rain is starting to move away from Rhode Island. But take a look at this. That low pressure moved very little over the course of a day and a half. And the other thing to note, too, is you see here this is a plot of weather conditions, but we have the temperature right here, which is 77 degrees. The dew point's plotted here at 72, and the wind's coming from the south. A dew point of 72 degrees is pretty impressive for midsummer, let alone October, mid-October. So we had this low-level tropical moisture that was coming up at a southerly wind right up into Rhode Island. Another thing to note is that we had a cold front that was coming in from the west. Didn't cross through during the time period when Rhode Island had the heavy rains, and Massachusetts, but nevertheless, it was approaching us. And then finally, when we got to 8:30 in the evening on the 15th, any remnant rains at that point had moved on to the east, and the cold front moved through. The low with the remnants of Tropical Depression 22 had moved up towards southeast or northeast Canada. Now what we're going to do is take a look at the water vapor imagery, which will show the moisture in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. Now, out through here, we had moisture that was coming up from the Gulf of Mexico out ahead of that cold front. In addition, we also had that low pressure system with the tropical depression, remnants of Tropical Depression 22, and also an additional tropical circulation out through here in the Atlantic. So there was a lot of moisture going around. Next, we'll go through a loop. This is what was going on Friday into Friday night. Okay, what we have is a bit of a squeeze play in here. This is 9:30 in the evening. Tropical downpours, very heavy rain has begun in southern New England, but it wasn't yet in the Blackstone Valley. It had started in southern New Hampshire, where they had been hit really hard the first time. We have a squeeze play, the moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, out ahead of the cold fronts being pushed in. At the same time, you've got the remnants of Tropical Depression 22. So right in here, where you see this whiter color, very heavy rains are falling in southern New England. We'll continue on. Now, 1:30 in the morning, very heavy rain is falling over the Blackstone Valley. See here, the rain has shifted. There's more moisture right in through there. And then 3:30 in the morning, still sitting over southeast Mass, Rhode Island, Blackstone Valley. And that should continue on. Nine o'clock in the morning, finally, the heaviest rain has moved to the east, and that considerable plume of tropical moisture has moved off. Next, we'll take a look at the radar. Keep in mind that this loop actually goes every 2 hours. You know, typically with a radar loop, you see shorter time periods in between. So basically what I want to show you is that there were 12 hours of heavy to moderate rain that fell across the Blackstone Valley, which it was a tremendous amount. 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and then 9 o'clock in the morning, it finally moved off to the northeast. We'll go one more time. Southern New Hampshire, and then it moves into the Blackstone Valley, also the Pawtuxet River Valley, and then moves off to the east.
Okay. Might be easier for me to hang on to the mic here. But as we can see, the emerging conditions are extreme. You got a lot of rainfall across over close to 50 miles of river miles here. It's a huge drainage area that's over 430 square miles from basically the tip of Worcester all the way down to the mouth of the Narragansett Bay. So we got a lot of inflow, a lot of rainfall, and those are the emerging conditions, okay? So we have a catastrophe in the making. Next slide, please. What we have here is the Blackstone River, basically in Northbridge and Woonsocket, NBR. Thanks. Oh, well. Okay, at the top here, NBR M3 is basically the area for Northbridge, the Blackstone River at Northbridge. As we can see the triangle here, as you follow down the river, that's the river gauge at Northbridge. As we follow down the river on the Blackstone River, you'll see another triangle. That's the Blackstone River at Woonsocket, and we can follow it all the way down to the bay. The upper watershed is basically 139 square miles. It's very hilly terrain, so therefore the rain, when it hits, there's going to be a lot of runoff. So there's going to be a lot of water coming downstream into the Blackstone River to the Woonsocket area. As we go on down, basically, if we include Northbridge and Woonsocket, there's a total of 416 square miles. Okay. Here we go. That's about 416 square miles right here. Okay, another 20 additional square miles before we exit out to Narragansett Bay. Next slide, please. As I mentioned and Nicole mentioned, there was just a lot of rainfall. We had about 6 inches of rainfall, a little bit more than 6 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period. Okay, basically almost in a 3-day period we had, next slide please, we had close to 10 inches of rainfall, okay, 8 to 10 inches total rainfall in a 3-day period from the 14th through the 16th. These are individual precip gauging stations around the area. So it's important to be aware of some of the equipment that's out in the field. As Raytheon mentioned, sometimes you don't need to purchase anything because there's a lot of stuff out there already. So think first before you buy. Next. As we can see here, there was a huge slug of rainfall, okay, in a very short period. As you can see here, these are hourly rainfall totals. This is a daily total. So most of the rain basically fell in a 24-hour period. It's important to understand, okay, one of the 3 R's to what I call the 3 R's of hydrology is understanding the rainfall. That is a very key important ingredient. Next slide, please. After you understand rainfall, the second R in hydrology is understanding the runoff. Basically, rainfall translates to runoff. How much of that runoff is going to come into your river basin is what we study as in hydrology. Basically, the excess amount of rainfall or runoff that goes into the system or the river system gets translated into a unit hydrograph. From 1 inch of runoff, basically, we translate that to a discharge. So that component is called the discharge due to the runoff from the rainfall. In situations here, we were not faced, fortunately, with snowmelt, because this could be even a worse event than what had happened. Okay? In this situation in October, we were only dealing with rainfall. In this other graphics that I want to portray here is that there is a difference in timing here. Okay? When rainfall first hits, basically, in the Northbridge area, there is about a 3 period before you'll start seeing the real big impacts of that rainfall or big impacts of that runoff in this situation. 3 periods, basically, we look at computational time, about 6 hours is equal to 1 period. So once that rainfall hits, there is basically an 18-hour period where we start seeing a huge amount of runoff into the Blackstone River at Northbridge. As we look at Woonsocket, basically, when rainfall first hits the basin, we have about a 5 period where you'll see the heavy slug of rainfall into the river system. Next slide, please. And that can last up to 4 days, okay? So basically, like I said, the second R is runoff. The combination of the runoff added to the base flow in situations where you're looking at downstream communities, one also has to be understanding of what's coming down. That's what you folks were saying. Well, we need to know what's coming down from these dams. That's called the routed flow component. So the summation of all this is basically the total discharge, and that basically leads to the third R to hydrology, which is river levels. Next slide, please. And in October 2005, basically, we saw a huge amount of flows at the Blackstone River downstream of Woonsocket. We had about 16,400 CFS.